God, I know that this title makes me seem like a stinky personal finance guru, but you're gonna want to trust me here. Budgeting. When done correctly, it is a great way to manage finances and get someone on track to reaching their financial goals, such as saving up for a house, retirement, or even a vacation, because nowadays most of us need a break from our day-to-day lives. However, I'm not a huge fan of budgeting, along with probably 98% of people, because having limits on any aspect of life is bunk. Personally, I've tried a lot of budgeting methods like YNAB and Excel spreadsheets, but in my opinion, they take a little too much effort and require a lot more attention than I'm willing to spend on them. For the longest time in my life, I was scared to spend money. Like, my main way of saving money was to just don't spend money. That all changed in early to mid 2020 because I was like less than a year into my first well-paying job, and something about the lockdowns made me go a little willy-nilly with my spending. At this point, I wasn't really following a budget, and my method of just don't spend money wasn't cutting it anymore. So I had a hard time gauging how much I was actually spending on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know what kind of delusion my brain was running on, but to justify all of my spending, I convinced myself that as long as I was able to cover all of my expenses and save up a little money for retirement, which thank goodness I set up automatic payments, I could spend a little money, spend a little here and there, and it wouldn't hurt me too much, right? This went on for a little longer than I wanted, and I started accumulating all of these material things that I didn't really need. However, I loved that rush of excitement I got whenever I made an order online and knew that I had a package coming for me. It wasn't until I took a look at my bathroom mirror, and a little to the right, is when I saw all of these skincare products that I don't really use, like ever. Which was when I realized I needed to reflect on my spending. So I came up with this completely original and not totally cliche thought of enough was enough. The imaginary number that I see in my bank account has been taking a beating for so long, and I needed to change that. And I wanted to start focusing on my financial goals. What I ended up doing was getting on board with this different budgeting method called the daily allowance. It's not a brand new concept, it's been around for a while, however, it's not often talked about. But let's change that. So buckle up, my name is Rin, and let's dive right in. So what a daily allowance is it's as simple as it sounds. A daily allowance is a set amount of money that is allocated each day for spending, and this amount is based on income, expenses, and financial goals. For people who want a better handle of their finances, this method acts like a little noose to prevent someone from spending well above their means. Not to mention, this method is great for people who are overly frugal and have a hard time spending money because there's less guilt associated with spending money that is allocated for spending. I will say, however, this budgeting method is best suited for people with predictable incomes. Think like your 9-to-5 folks or folks who consistently get fixed amount checks on a regular basis. Before we get to calculating, I do want to put out a quick disclaimer that I am not a personal finance advisor. I just like to talk about personal finance. So use the contents in this video for educational purposes. And with that out of the way, let's get to calculating. First things first, what we're going to do is calculate the monthly pay. For this calculation, we don't really care about gross income because I'm going to assume that most of us are law-abiding citizens who pay taxes, and if you don't, then please send me over your accountant's contact info. I'd love to have a productive conversation with them. Anyways, so take-home pay. This is the income after taxes, social security, insurance premiums, retirement contributions, etc. So pretty much what you see when the direct depositor paycheck hits. For me, I earn around $2,382 on a bi-weekly basis for my 9-to-5 job after everything has been said and done. In order to get my monthly income number, I'm going to multiply this amount by 26 because I get 26 of these checks every year. Then I'm going to divide this number by 12 to get my monthly income number. If you get paid monthly, feel free to skip this part, and if you get paid twice a month, just multiply take-home pay by 2 and you'll get your monthly income. Next thing you're going to want to do is calculate your fixed bills number. Fixed bills are bills that you have to pay every month where you have a limited control over. Think like rent, mortgage payments, car payments, insurance premiums, utilities, phone, internet, child support, alimony, etc. My number comes out to be $1,358. Up next is savings, and I'm using this term very loosely because savings could be anything that puts you on track for reaching your financial goals. Think like retirement, investments, savings, emergency funds, student loans, paying off debt, etc. My number is $2,000 a month, and the majority of that goes to saving for retirement. Up next is discretionary subscriptions, which are things that are easy to calculate fixed amounts that are paid every month or year. However, if shit hit the fan, it wouldn't be the end of the world to cancel these subscriptions, so think like streaming services, entertainment, software, gym, skill courses, etc. And my number comes out to be $64. And last but not least, giving. Think like donations and giving money to family members. This number is $675 every month. Once I add up all of these values, I get a total of $4,097 outgoing each month. If I subtract this number from my monthly pay, I'm left with $1,064 to cover variable expenses like groceries, eating out, fun money, and transportation. For a lazy calculation, you could just divide this remainder number by 31 for days of the month and get your daily allowance. It's not the most accurate, but it gets the job done. However, if you want to be a little extra like me, you can multiply this remainder number by 12 to get the annualized amount. Then divide that annualized amount by 365 to get the daily amount. For me, this comes out to be $34.98 a day for my daily allowance, but let's be real here, I'm just going to round it up to 35. And that's it. How I make this budget work for me is, well, I figured out pretty early on that it's not feasible to be super rigid with this kind of budget. What I mean by this is I cannot be bothered splitting my weekly grocery trip into two because I decided to go on the first of a fresh month and I just haven't accumulated enough money for that. I'd rather just go in debt. But more generally speaking, what I typically do is not spend for a few days so I can put money towards bigger purchases. As far as tracking goes, there are apps out there that can be used to track the daily allowance budget, both on the iOS and Android app stores. However, I like to track this budget in a little journal. And just for y'all, I created a budget tracking template that I've linked below and you can download for free to either print out or use digitally. So here's a free template. I'm using it digitally with my preferred note-taking app, GoodNotes, but you could pretty much use any note-taking app out there. The template itself is pretty bare bones, but it's great at getting the job done. So up here, it's just filling out some details like month and year, the daily allowance amount that was calculated earlier, and how much a tally mark line is worth, which will be used to track partial spending. To get this amount, just take your daily allowance and divide that by 5 and put down that number over here. And we'll get to what that means in a bit. So to show you how to use this tracker, let's go to the first day of the month for March 2023, which is on a Wednesday. Let's say I bought a lunch for $13. I would put down 2 tally marks for that day to track that spending because each mark represents $7, which, by the way, I usually round up for most cases to prevent overspending. Then, on the second day of the month, I went and bought groceries for like $48. So I would write down the tally marks for that day of the month and put a check mark in this mini box to indicate that that day's allowance has been spent. But what about the remaining $13, since one day's allowance couldn't cover the full grocery trip? In this case, I would go back to the previous day where I didn't spend the full amount and write 2 more tally marks to keep track of that spending. And that's it. After the month, you're going to take your monthly allowance and subtract it by the total amount spent for the month to see if there is any extra left over. What I like doing is putting any extra money into savings, but it's your money and you shouldn't let some goofy internet stranger dictate how you spend it. Like any other budgeting method, the daily allowance might work for you, or it might not. But it's always nice to know what other options are out there, especially if the budgeting method you're using isn't the best fit for you and it doesn't match your financial goals. And I gotta be honest here, my favorite thing about this budgeting method is that it doesn't matter what I spend my money on, just the amount. So any questionable purchases I make stays anonymous not only to the person who's peeking at my budget tracker, rude, but it also stays anonymous with me because my questionable purchases are none of my business and it's probably better for my mental health that I forget about them as soon as possible. And with that, I'll end the video. If you enjoyed this video, please give this video a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Plus, it's free, so you really have nothing to lose. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, hit that subscribe button. Also, drop a comment down below letting me know your favorite way to manage your spending because I'm a nosy gal when it comes to personal finance. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for your support, and I'll catch you next time. Toodles!